Everybody, for joining us on the third episode of The Female Fist. My name is Scarlett Delgado, and I have a really intriguing guest with us today. She brought home bronze for the Golden Girl tournament out in Sweden. She's also brought
Silver.
which one?
Silver.
Silver?
Oh yeah, I lost the finals, man.
Silver. I'm corrected. Silver. She's also brought home 2 silver medals for the Canadian Championships until 2019, when she brought home for the 64 kilogram division a gold medal. So please welcome our Canadian reigning champion, Kaitlyn Clark. How you doing, Kaitlyn?
Good. Thanks for having me. Sorry for correcting you there.
No. Please correct me. I want everybody to know exactly at what caliber you are. And let me tell everybody, I've known Kaitlyn for quite some years. She is quite the amazing athlete. Every single club show that I've gone to, if you've been there and if you fought, I've always seen you win. Like, honestly, we were having this conversation earlier. I'm really surprised that 2019 was your first Canadian championship. I always see you winning.
You know what? It was funny because some people, when I won, they were like, well, how many of you won? And I was like, this is my first one. And they were like, what? I thought you had won like numerous times before. And even before I won nationals, people were calling me a Canadian champion. And I was like, no, I've never won Canadians. And they were perplexed by it. I mean, just as I was, but like, they were like, how, but I always see you beat these really good girls. Like, how are you not a Canadian champion?
I swear to God, like you and we had this conversation earlier. Like, I literally thought for years that, yeah, you were the champion. That's what I figured. But whatever. Now you are. So there's your rightful crown where it belongs. Okay. So a lot of the audience, they don't know who you are. So why don't you give us all a little bio about yourself? Why'd you start boxing? Why'd you go down specifically this path? Tell me everything.
Okay. So obviously it's a question we get asked a lot. And then my story is very different from most people's. There are a lot of people you hear, oh, my dad boxed, my brother boxed. I tagged along to the gym. Pardon me?
Want to say something?
Yeah, both you and Mandy, I'm pretty sure that's how you guys got into it. But a lot of people, it was like they had a sibling or a parent, typically a male figure in their life who boxed. For me, it wasn't like that. Boxing was not a part of my family. I actually didn't even start I hadn't watched a full professional boxing fight until I had like 15 fights.
Really?
Like that is how removed from the boxing world my life was. But what it was that I danced growing up, and I'm a big reality TV junkie. So I was watching Dancing with the Stars back in, I think it was 2006. That was a long time ago. Oh but Layla Ali was on it, and I didn't know who she was. I didn't really care. It was the fact that I was captivated by her beauty, her elegance on the dance floor. And then she has this phenomenal physique. Like even to this day, I think she's like 44 years old or something. If you follow her on Instagram, like that woman has an amazing, like she's goals, straight up goals.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like,
right?
Pardon me?
She's a mother of 2, right?
Yeah, she's got a few kids.
Yeah.
And she got a banging body, but that's what it was. It was like, she had this elegance about her and she was so feminine on the dance floor. And then she had this very fit physique that you typically at that point, like that was during that Paris Hilton era where everybody was just really skinny and you like strong wasn't considered pretty in the media anyways. And yeah, and then she was so outspoken. She told people off and I was like, that is who I want to be right there. Like, I want to be like this chick. What does she do? I looked it up, saw she boxed. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do with my life.
I bet that she would be so happy to hear that. To hear that she made that kind of impact on somebody and then look at the path you chose.
I actually tweeted at her like maybe 6 years ago about it. And she responded to it and retweeted it. And I was like, that was pretty cool. Like, yeah, like it was just, I'm sure she doesn't even remember. Like it's it's like one off, but like,
oh, maybe she does.
Yeah, like
one day she'll see this.
My entire path after the age of 18 is because of that person, which is pretty unreal because I've never even met her. But yeah, so then I had to wait to start boxing until I was 18. So I had to wait 3 years because my parents were so against it.
Really?
They didn't want me to be hit in the head. So the rule was like when I turned 18, I could sign off for all my own life and I was my own responsibility. But until that point, my parents didn't want me being in danger. So I just kind of stuck around like I played other sports at like pretty high levels. I've always been a competitive athlete. And then but sports always came really easy to me. Like,
You are a very athletic person.
they just came easy. And boxing was the very first thing I ever tried that I sucked at.
Really?
I was horrible. You can literally ask people that I started with, and I was not good. I cried my first time sparring. I was a wuss. Like total night and day difference from like the athlete that I am now in terms of boxing wise. But yeah, and it was the fact that it was so hard for me, and I was used to sports typically being pretty easy.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to do it. And I remember like my first coach basically told me, she's like, you could always quit. And I was like, no. But because she gave me the out, right? Like I think that makes her a good coach, is she saw somebody who was really struggling, and it's like, well, you can quit. Like the options there. There's no shame in not wanting to be a high level boxer. You play so many other sports, you're smart, you got all these other things going for you. And I was like, no, I'm gonna become a Canadian champion. And I was like, I told her that. I know we've talked about this since, because we're still friends.
Yes, we
But
did.
I was like, I am going to win my first provincial title. The first time I go, I was like, I'm not going to lose. Then I'm going to go to nationals. I'm going to podium my first year, which I also did. And then I was like, I'm going to win a Canadian title, which I've done. And then the next thing was I wanted to win a world championship, which is still on the list. It's the only thing left on the list of what I told this woman 10 years ago.
It's just,
and I told her the weight classes that I was going to do it in too. I was like, because at the time I think I was about 195 pounds. And
really?
I was like, I'm gonna fight at. I like pointed at it. It was like I just like pointed at the wall at the weight class chart, and it was between 141 and 152. And I was like, that's where I'm gonna fight. And I've always fought in those two weight classes pretty much. So
good for you.
Like
you set
the
your goals and you're
Nostradamus.
like, I'm gonna get that.
Yeah, the Nostradamus of my own boxing career, I guess.
Do you do like anything right now outside of boxing? Like, do you kind of just do something to just level out all of that built up like energy that you got going on? Do you ever try to?
Yeah, people that are really close to me know this, that I tend to escape. Like I go off the grid. I find a place that's very remote. I leave for, up to like 4 to 7 days at a time. No cell phone, no nothing. I disappear, but I'm usually in the wilderness somewhere. That's what I do. It's so calm and peaceful.
Yeah.
And like I'm a wilderness lady, which a lot of people don't assume.
Really?
But yeah, it's very calming to me to just be in the wild, and like where you're chopping wood every day to make fire, and you're cooking your meals like that you brought on your back and you carried in, like things like that. I've always really enjoyed that. And that's where I find peace, because it makes you realize how small you are and how insignificant you are, but how significant you are. Because when you're surrounded by these big trees and like water, and you're such a tiny little speck. But then it's like, when you think about it, you're chopping down trees and you're impacting the environment anyways. So it's like, yeah, we're like, it puts into perspective how small we are, but also how big of an impact we can make. So it always just brings me back.
That's beautiful. It's like reconnecting back with the main source, the main elements, and finding your grounding.
Exactly. Literally.
So, and now you've been boxing a little bit longer than me. Like I think that I'm reaching like my 8-year mark. How long have you been boxing for?
I'm at 10 years now.
You're at 10 years.
Yeah. My first fight. So I moved pretty quick, actually. I was through novice within, I think it was within a year and 2 months of walking into a gym. I was done novice. Like I won my first provincials like a year, and it was only like a year and a half or something into my actual fight career. Like it was very quick. But yeah, I started boxing, and then 6 months later I had my first fight. It was just like boom, boom. And I don't think I was ready, but
how did you get that pressure back then? Because I don't think that women's boxing was necessarily, well, from what I remember, it wasn't even the Olympics still. It was still something that was kind of like women had their ring, and then you had the men's ring.
Yeah. So I've always been really lucky, or blessed, I guess, in a sense that no matter where I've been in my career, I've always trained around other very accomplished women. Like my first boxing coach, Kathy Ure, she was a 2-time Canadian champion in her own right. One of my training partners was Debbie Richards, who won numerous Canadian titles. Like anyone will tell you that Debbie Richards back in the day was like the girl. Like she was it. She scared me. She's like the nicest human in the world. She scared me. But so I'm this novice, this lady at the time. I'll call her a lady. I don't even know how much older she was than me. But back then, there wasn't like female boxing. Wasn't what it is now. But at that time in 2010, she had like 120 fights, which was unreal. It was unheard of.
Wow, that is a lot. That surprises me.
Yeah. So this is who I'm training with. And my coach is a 2-time Canadian champion. It's like, I've always been really blessed to be around high caliber women who
Yeah.
are accomplished in the ring and outside. So I never really felt pressure because I always knew that like, I always knew that there was a possibility that I could be great too, because I was like, I surround myself with people I want to be like. And I've always been like that. Like you become like the 5 people you spend the most time around.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I've really been very blessed in my boxing career because like for that. But yeah, I don't think there was a lot of pressure. Like before my first fight though, I thought I was gonna die.
Why was that? Was it the nerves or was it just
Oh
like
yeah.
the actual the
I
first fights?
the girl I was fighting was supposed to have 0 fights or something, or like 3.
Yeah.
Very minimal. It's actually my first fight was against Bonnie Hunter, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, she was my first fight. We go way back.
You know what?
And
Oh, she was there. She fought Mary Spencer that day.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, she was my first bout. And what's actually kind of funny is that we had this like, I'll call it like a rivalry through
Yeah.
like the very early part of our career because we always fought each other. And then we had this moment she worked my corner at nationals when I won.
That's crazy.
And we had this moment where we were like, wow, we've come full circle. This is insane. That we started around the same time. And like, now you're the one that's in my corner. Yeah. So it was like a very beautiful moment. But anyways, she was supposed to have like 3 fights allegedly. She shows up with 7. She's 6 wins, 1 loss. 10 years older than me. I'm like, what if I die? Like, what if this shit kills me? And I'm still here to tell the tale. But yeah, so.
And like, how did you do? Like, how'd the fight go for your first fight ever?
So we turned into an exhibition because of the bout difference. That was the rule.
Okay.
But it was competitive enough where Kathy, right after the fight, she's like, "Okay, we're taking it on their club show next week or like 2 weeks later."
Yeah, and you did?
Yeah, so we took it on the club show in their gym. I actually watched. I have the DVD of it. I watched it the other day. I was like, "Wow, it was pretty bad when I first started." She beat me. She bested me. She bested me quite a few times as a novice. I evened it out when we got open class though.
Well, you know,
But
it's an experience, right?
yeah, it's all love though. Like
Yeah. I know Bonnie. She's a wonderful person. She's got this like good light to her. That's
oh yeah,
you guys have that experience though.
yeah, it's pretty unreal.
God. So, okay. So, your first national title was 2019, as we mentioned. So, you've been boxing now for 10 years. Now, I know you personally. Obviously, our audience doesn't. And I know that you've been through a lot in the past 10 years. You've gone through a lot of ups and downs. Most people don't come back from those kinds of things and win a championship like that. So, do you want to take us through those transitions? Do you want to kind of highlight, like, was there a moment where you're like, I need to change something? I need to make a switch? Because 10 years in 2019, you made that gold happen. So something changed. Want to tell us?
Yeah, a word that I've always used to define myself throughout my boxing career, and I still do to this day, is resilient. Like if someone were like, what's 3 words that describe you? Resilient, 100%. Throughout my boxing career, it's like even that first fight with Bonnie, you know, she's got 7 fights, I have 0. I've been boxing for 6 months. I'm 10 years younger than her. Like, you know, she has that woman strength. I'm a kid. From then on, like from my very first day in the gym, it was just like I was always having to be resilient.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like I was with a coach and she sat me down. She's like, if you want to be great, you need to get the experience. Like that's the only way to be great is to fight great people. So we literally fought 7 Canadian champions in a row and I lost 3 of them. And then it was like all one day I won, but I was on 8 losses in a row at that point when I won that first one. And I'd gotten to the point where I forgot what it felt like to be a winner.
Wow.
And a lot of people, like, I remember my coach and I had this conversation and I said to her, I'm like, the one thing I know, and I thanked her for still like, you know, investing in me so much considering I was on this massive losing streak. But I said to her, I was like, the one thing I know is that other people would have quit because we had the option to take easier fights. We had the option when I had 13 fights to fight someone who had 10, but we fought someone with 50. Like I got whooped. And it's like every single time I came back with the mindset of this is growth, this is development.
Absolutely.
So that worked for so long. And then I started beating these girls, but then it kind of leveled out where I was on this huge growth curve, and then the growth curve stopped.
Right.
And that was around the time, I like petered out. After nationals, I lost on a split decision in the finals. I was pretty down about it in 2014, which in hindsight is kind of funny because it's like 3.5 years into my boxing career. I'm sad that I lost on a split to a 7-time Canadian champion.
Well, that's being a champion, like an inner champion. You don't settle for anything except for what you want.
Yeah, and in hindsight, it's kind of funny to think about, but I actually ended up getting very badly injured shortly after that. Yeah. And then all of 2015 was a write-off for me. The entire year was a write-off. I had a really bad back injury, and then I got pushed off a bus right before provincials and tore the ligaments in my foot. So then I couldn't fight then. Yeah, I got pushed off a bus. Just bad luck. Some guy pushed me when I was getting off, and I tore the ligaments in my foot, and it was a week before the tournament to qualify for nationals.
Did you like punch him out?
No, I just walked to training. I was like, oh, whatever, my ankle just kind of hurts. No big deal.
Walk right to the gym. See?
Yeah, it was a big mistake because I ended up
heart of a champion right there.
Yeah, it was a horrible idea. I tore the ligaments in my foot. So that put me out for quite a while. And around that time as well, I started. So I guess we'll go back a little bit. Before all of this, I started having really bad foot pain in the morning. It hurt to live. It physically hurt me to be alive. I can't put it any other way. And so I was like doing all these tests, and I was like 21 at the time. I was really young. And it comes back after nationals that I have rheumatoid arthritis, which a lot of people don't know about. It's an autoimmune disease, and it causes inflammation in your body, but specifically in your joints. And then it's not from wear and tear. It's just you're born with it. And typically it doesn't surface until you're in like your 50s and 60s. So
but it came for you.
Yeah, as a young athlete, I remember when I found out and I went to the gym and I told a friend of mine who had gone through some autoimmune issues and had thyroid cancer and some other things. And she was like, Kaitlyn, that's a big deal. How do you feel? And I was like, whatever, I can do anything I want. Like, I'm fine. And that was the wrong mindset because I just kept plowing forward. So flash forward a little bit, 2015, total write-off. We find out that there's a second qualifier in 2016.
Yep.
I have a rheumatoid arthritis flare-up right before a tournament. Then the qualifier is 3 weeks after. My dad dies the 3 weeks before. So it's like my dad died like right after the Brampton Cup, which I didn't compete at because I was in the hospital the week before and I didn't get medically cleared. So when my dad passed away, I kind of had to reassess my life. And it was very challenging because I was going through this point in my life where I was in my last semester of my undergrad as well. Like I was finishing up my university career. And I was trying to focus on boxing and everything was just too much. So I took about 8 or 9 months off at that point as well. So it was like almost 2 years of my boxing career as a write-off. Like in terms of fights in the ring, the development mentally, spiritually, physically outside the ring was great. But yeah, when my dad passed away, that was like this moment where I really looked at my life and I was like, what do you really want from the world? Like you need to figure it out now, because it was the first moment where I realized like my dad died very suddenly. So it was like life can stop in an instant. And if you're not doing what makes you happy or what makes you feel good, stop doing it. And so my mind, like people will tell you, like I changed completely. I was a totally different person after my dad died. Yeah. And then that ended up actually impacting some of my relationships overall, where I stopped being a doormat and I stopped doing things just because somebody told me to. And I started fighting back a little bit, where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Like, I think I should train this way. And it did cause a bit of a rift. And I had a falling out with my coach, who had been my coach at this point for 6 years. And I had learned a lot under her. And then I remember going to nationals and not boxing well at all, having a very hard time making weight. And we had this conversation that I should quit, and I agreed. And within 3 minutes after agreeing, I was like, no, like, I was like, I'm not quitting. Like, I'm going to figure out how to do this without my body hurting, without me being injured, without me mentally feeling horrible. And then a few months later, I'd say about 6 months later, I ended up quitting my career. I had a career at this point in Ottawa. I quit my career and moved home and decided that I was just going to box and figure it all on my own. And then I won a Canadian championship.
And then I won a Canadian championship. Wow, Kaitlyn, that is quite an amazing story. And I really hope that everybody listened to that and everybody's paying really close attention, because that right there is what champions are made of. And that right there is a prime example of if you put your mind to something, you can go through anything. Right there on her shirt, it says faith over fear. Faith over
Yeah.
fear. Kaitlyn, you're somebody that should really like, that's amazing. I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that for me, it's like, I always look at like, I've always had this, it's funny, like I'll say things, people are like, oh, are you a pessimist? I annoy people with how optimistic I am about things because I'll come up against challenges and people are like, well, you can just quit. You can just walk away. Like my first coach, right? Give me the out. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to figure it out. I might get a little like pissy along the way, but I'm going to figure it out. And that whole experience of like kind of completely removing myself and being at my lowest point and not having a whole lot of support. Like I remember that 8 weeks prepping for that nationals, nobody thought I was going to win. Like if you would have asked anybody other than I think like me, Sid, Natasha, like some of my supporting group,
Yeah.
and like Chuck and people at Blue Water, like no, outside of that, I don't think anybody thought I would win. All they knew was that I was flying to other countries for sparring on like for a week. I was going out east to spar. I was literally in my car. I put 90,000 kilometers on my car in sparring. It was like 47,000 kilometers for boxing in like literally a 2-month period. I was driving everywhere. I was like double sparring. Like I remember I'd drive 2 hours to Kitchener after work. I would spar, and then I would drive to the other gym in town and spar more there.
Like, oh my
I
God,
just
take a break ever? Did you just like get some
no,
water maybe?
no. I just was like, I need to do this for me to prove to myself because I've wanted to win a Canadian championship for so long, and it was basically told to me that it will never happen, and I don't take never for an option. So I did what I had. I literally did everything I had to do to make it happen. I fundraised for some like for these trips overseas. I paid my own way to go over and spar with Stacey Copeland because
Wow.
she's like a very decorated professional, very decorated amateur.
Yeah.
And we're good friends. And I was like, I need to get to England to spar with this girl.
Yeah.
And then it was just like having to invest that much into myself has showed me what I'm actually capable of. But the result afterwards, I remember when Sid after nationals, Sid and I were working together. We'd worked together for about like 8 weeks at this point. And he tweaked my jab. And I'm just thinking, man, like I can't even throw a jab right, but I'm a Canadian champion. Like that's amazing. Imagine what's gonna happen when my jab is good. Like the fact that I'm winning these, and I looked at him, I'm like, how did I get this far without you? I will never forget this. We're like, we're doing pads and I stopped and he's like, what? Sid doesn't talk that much. And he's like, what? And I'm like, how did I get this far without you? And he was like, well, what do you mean? Like he thought that I meant it as something negative. And I was like, no, Sid, I'm a Canadian champion and I've done all these really amazing things and look how far I am. And you're literally deconstructing my jab and fixing it. Like imagine how far we're gonna go together. Like this is literally the ground floor. Like a Canadian championship is the ground floor. How amazing is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that is what you've constructed yourself. You have literally built yourself from the ground up. And then Coach Sid, he is such a like, I don't, you know what? I don't think that he gets enough credit, to be honest. He's such a valuable individual. He's
Oh
got
yeah.
this, like wisdom in him. He's got this knowledge, and he understands what it takes to speak to the athlete themselves. Not everybody, the individual athlete. He's got a heart of
Yeah.
gold, man.
He's an incredible person. He like I remember asking him to coach me full time because I was at Blue Water in Sarnia, but I knew like if I wanted, it was a very hard decision because I love training with Chuck Evans.
Yeah.
And he put in so much time with me and he was there with me at nationals and like we had such a great connection. But I remember I talked to my sports psychologist ear off about how do I tell Chuck that I need to leave? Like how I love this man. I don't want to hurt him.
Yeah.
It was the first time that I was leaving where it was my choice to leave. And I remember asking Sid, I was like, Sid, I don't know how to tell him. And he was like, Kaitlyn, it doesn't matter how you enter into relationships. What matters is how you exit them. And he's like, so the choice is yours. And I like have never forgotten when he told me that. But that was also something that cemented like how great of a human being Sid is.
Yes.
Where I know he'll have my back because he told me that. Where it's like that's how he approaches relationships. Is that, it's never about what happened in the past. It's about the last thing.
Yes. He's given me some good words exactly like that.
Yeah.
Exactly like that. He is like, you know what? He's a great man. And I think
Is
that he's done wonders for you as well, even in that short blip of time, because you were working with him only for 8 weeks, right? Did you say 8 weeks
so
at nationals?
for an hour a week. I worked with him for like 8 hours. Like, you put into perspective, it's like 8 weeks, 8
8 hours,
hours.
Canadian champion.
And like Chuck played a big part in that too. Like I never would want to take away credit from the people in Sarnia. Chuck Evans, that man, like he made me just so much more confident in my hand speed and my ability, because I had never thought that I was quick. And then it's funny now because I like, I spar with, like, I've done rounds with you. It's like, Mandy, you guys are so much smaller than me. And the fact that okay, I am slower, I will admit, but I don't think I don't think I'm that slow for my size.
No, you're not. I'll be
And
the
so
first
it's
to
like,
say I know you're
yeah.
not.
And it's because of Chuck. Like I would not have won nationals the way that I did had Chuck not have like helped me become confident and helped me work on my hand speed. So it's like, it was like this tag team between him and Sid that they kind of, neither one really knew was happening. But it worked perfectly.
Well, at least you made it work, because that's the goal, right? Because at the end of the day, I think that we give our credit to our coaches, of course, right? We love our coaches, the time that they invest in us, the impact that they have on us, on individual athletes. But then at the end of the day, like, we have to do always what's best for ourselves. And the coaches, being good coaches, they know that too. They
You
know.
would, yeah, you would hope, right? Like that's, to me, that's the marker of a good coach, is if your athlete can leave and you don't have, like, there's no sour grapes about it. It's like, no, this person needs to move on for whatever reason it is.
Yeah.
But what you were saying there about how we're always so quick to give thanks to our coach, that's another way that I've really grown over the years. Is I used to like pay homage to my coach. And like, I love Sid, but like, yo, when I win, man,
It's about you.
that's
It's
me
all
now.
about
And
you.
I never was like that. I was always like, oh, thanks to my sparring partners. Like I was the last person on the list. Whereas now it's like God, me, Sid.
And you know what? That's a really good point that you make, because everybody forgets this is your journey. This is
Yeah.
your journey. And when you make these accomplishments, it is about you. You can't tag team your coach and say, can you finish the round for me? Or like, can you
If
just
I
like,
could do that, Sid would be in every round.
can you just finish this quickly for me, please?
Right? Yeah, and like you can't, like, it's funny, like in fight sport, I think people, because you read about it on the internet, is like, oh, this athlete doesn't appreciate their coach, or like this and that. But like when a team wins the Super Bowl, it's all about the players. It's in team sports, it's all about the players when they win. In individual sports, though, it's like you're expected to, and like my coach is helping me get there, but like I'm the one who's performing and putting my life on the line. And that's actually something Sid had told me. He was like, when he started training me, one of the stipulations was that I wasn't allowed to thank him on the internet. He told me that in a message. He was like, I want no thanks. I want no praise. He's like, I just want to help you. And that's when I was like, man, this guy's the real deal. Is that he didn't want anything. And even when I won nationals, I think I tagged him in the post, and I just said, thanks to Sid and Natasha Spence for like the sparring. I never said like for this, that, and the other, because he didn't want that. And I was like, this is the man that I need in my life at this stage of my career, is that because he was an athlete, he sees that, like, he's helping me make the magic in the ring, but he's helping me do it. And because he's able to pull his ego out of it, it makes for a much easier relationship, coach athlete wise. But it's like, he also knows that I appreciate him. I thank him every day.
Yeah. He's like, you know what? And it all comes from him.
Yeah.
It's all right from here. You know what? He's going to be so upset when he sees this, because we're just giving him so much credit right now.
Ruining his street cred. No one's ever going to be scared of him ever again. They're like, oh, he's a softie. Like, such a nice guy.
In training.
Yeah. No.
So another thing that is actually something that I've been thinking about, because I don't see you obviously as much as we normally would, like out of COVID. So like, what's training looking like for you right now during this COVID? And like, do you still have the same aspirations? Like, you're going to make it to the world championships. I'm like, we all know that. but do you still have like the same now that you have a whole year that just went by?
I think that this year for me has been it's been a gift. Like this is where I get annoyingly optimistic. Everyone is so quick to be like, this year is horrible. This year's garbage. I want it to be over, like whatever. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, okay. My last fight was in February. My last training camp was in February/March, like of last year.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've even sparred against someone my own size.
Right.
But in that time, like Sid and I have had this chat where it's when I wasn't living here training with him all the time, I would see him once a week. And so it's like in a year's time of working with him, I may be like, taking out holidays, whatever. We maybe worked together for 40 hours before I moved here. And then it's like I move here and I'm out east. I'm in Montreal. I'm back here. Oh, it's Christmas. Now I'm back in Montreal. Then I'm in Sweden. Then I'm in Korea. Then we're in lockdown. And so it was like these 4 months went by so fast. And then when we reopened up in July, I think it was 2 weeks in, I was like, so this is the most time we've ever spent together. And he's like, I know, I can't even believe that. He's like, you've been here over 6 months, 7 months now, and this is the most time that we've ever spent together.
Wow.
And the amount of development that I've done from technically, I know I'm way better than I was a year ago. But I think I have this swagger about me now when I box where it's like, I'll drop my hands. I used to be like, all the time. And if my hands drop, it's because I'm tired. Now it's like, no, I'm going to drop my hands. I'm going to taunt you a little bit. I got some swagger in the ring, and
you're like, let's go. Let's throw some.
Yeah, that comes from the confidence, right? Like,
absolutely.
That's the mental side of it that I was missing for so long. And another really great thing about this year actually is, a lot of people actually I don't think know this about me, but I've had an eating disorder for about 8 years. So this was the year where it was like I told Sid about it. It was like the first time I ever actually talked to a coach about it. But this year we got someone to help me out with my nutrition, who I've also told about this and like very much in depth. And I think it's like the first time I've ever actually mentioned it, like in like a live interview or anything. But this year it's been the year where I'm able to rebuild that relationship with food and like nourishing my body. And the fact that I was able to let a coach in, let a nutritionist in, and let my training partner in, like Mandy knows I'm weird with food. To me, it's like, that's such a relief. And it's really setting me up to be great down the road, because to think that I can be a high performance athlete and like not understand, like, and not have my head in the best spot possible in terms of like nutrition, training, sleep, everything. Yeah. That's a flawed concept that you can get there without every single individual piece. Absolutely. So we've spent all this time working on, and it has not been easy whatsoever. Like I still have days where I wake up and I'm like, oh, well, I'm a little bit heavier today, so I'm not going to eat. Doesn't make sense. Now I can look at it like from that analytical standpoint. So that's a huge gain too. Like
that's amazing.
This year, like this past year for me has been absolutely incredible. And COVID sucks. It does. It's horrible. People are dying. But I never would have gotten this year in my career at like in any other situation.
This was the time you got to really focus on you exclusively without any other buzz going on, without responsibilities. Like, for example, I'm going to put myself on the back burner because I have to take care of this tournament coming up, or I have to take care of this club show. None of that's going on. No like big events or concerts or anything that could possibly distract us. All of that is out the window. And you literally took this time to just say, I can do this and I can make myself even better than what I already am.
Yeah, and a big piece of that came, like it was not an easy journey at all. It still isn't. There was a couple of times where I told Sid where I'm like, yo, I'm drinking with my friends, like I'm doing these things that I know I shouldn't be doing to be a good athlete, but it's like those things had to happen so that I'm able to be where I'm right now. And I think too, it's like surrounding myself with people like Sid, Mandy, you, my nutritionist, Devore. It's like, it's allowed me to be my best self and like focus on every day. I want to be a little bit better than I was the day before. And it doesn't mean that like, you know, in boxing, we always think about weight. Like everything is about weight.
And, like we weigh ourselves every day. What are you at like, today? 124.7.
Yeah. Give me one weight class athlete who isn't like petrified or like traumatized by the scale in some capacity, where it's like you get on the scale, you're pointing more and you're like, well, I didn't like I didn't pee as much this morning, or
Yeah,
like you're trying to make like up some reason.
all these things.
Right. And it's this time has allowed me to really reflect on these things that I do. And then I do them. And when I do them in front of Sid, I'm like, I know, like I tell him straight up verbally, I'm like, that was the person I used to be saying that. Like, that's not me now. That's not who I want to be. But it's not to say that like when I was saying about being better every day, it's like, it's not like every day my jab has to be 1% better. Every day I have to run 1% faster. It's like, I look at all the different, I compartmentalize a lot of things. So I look at all the different pieces of my life. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, with my nutrition, today I might be 1% better. Now, tomorrow, okay, well, my sleep habits might be 1% better. But on the whole, because they make up who I am, I'm becoming 1% better overall. So it's about like not being fixated on like the individual thing and being able to look at yourself as a whole being, as
Yeah.
opposed to just like some person who has to make weight and train all the time and win fights because of what other people might say.
No, it's always about what's going, like you have to always give 100% in your day, what's going on in your day in those moments. It's not about like, okay, today I didn't run as fast as yesterday, so now I suck. It's like, no, that's just your body probably recovering because of the awesome workout you did yesterday.
Yeah.
So give yourself a second. Just, enjoy like what your body's letting you do, which is rest a little bit. No, that's a good point that you make, that not every day you have to be perfect. Not every day has to be like this. You just got to show up and give it what you got in that moment and push
Yeah.
yourself and just kind of go with that.
And look at it as like your athletic career, like even if you, let's say you're not an athlete, it's like in your actual like professional career, like that isn't, we were talking about this I think today or the other day, was like that doesn't, a lot of athletes or like really successful people think that that one thing defines them,
Yes.
and it doesn't. And
Mhm.
so it's like I might not be a better boxer tomorrow than I am today, but I'll tell you what, like my tutoring business, I'm going to give 1% more to one of my students than I did yesterday.
Yes.
And it's like that's still growth, that's still you as a being growing, and then that will spill over into your athletic life. So it's like maybe today I don't have the energy to like run faster, but I can treat my spouse or my mother or my brother or whatever a little bit better than I did the day before. I can have more patience. Now you're growing, you're becoming a better person. That will spill over into your athletic career, where when you get frustrated with yourself, you're going to have more patience.
That's an excellent way to put it. You know what? Like, this has been such a great, very substantial conversation. And I have loved every second of this conversation. Honestly, this is like some really good stuff. I hope that everybody is listening and hearing, really understanding what it takes to be a champion, not to be so hard on yourself. You can hit rock bottom and still be a Canadian champion. You can literally put 100% effort into yourself and look at the final product, which we have right here, is a champion in all forms. Thank you, Kaitlyn, for sharing with us your story and everything that's been going on with you. And you know that, especially right now, you're going to be having a lot of people cheer for you going into the next nationals and eventually into the world champions, which I'm very, very confident that you're going to accomplish that. You're going to crush that. Do you have any
Uh,
final words that you want to say to everybody?
I think if I could like say one thing, especially people who like do sports, like girls who do sports, it's especially young girls. Listen, just because you're a girl doesn't mean you have to be a pushover and listen to what people tell you. Like my biggest thing, I wish someone had told me this 10 years ago. If your coach tells you to do something and you morally don't agree with it, or like you feel like this weird conflict in your life about it, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but speak up and say something. Like it's okay to express how you feel about things. And I think as women in sport, we're told you're too emotional, you're too this, you're too that, as
Yeah.
opposed to being like, you are who you are, express yourself.
Yes.
So yeah, I think like for women in sport or women in the workplace, it's like if you want a raise, go ask for it. Like you don't get things without asking for it. You got to break down doors. You got to do it on your own terms. And honestly, like if you're a good person, it'll work out. And like you don't need to be a jerk about it. Treat other people with loving kindness, but also go after what you want, and then you'll positively affect the people around you because you'll be happier. So
Absolutely. Just like, for example, what's the difference of if one of the female fighters, let's say she loses a fight or she doesn't do well in sparring. What's the difference of her crying as opposed to a guy throwing things?
Exactly.
We're just
Why is it that girls
like,
can't cry? And if that guy wants to cry, let him cry too. And if I remember one time actually I threw something and I got in trouble. But it's
oh,
like I see guys throw things all the time. I didn't throw anything like in the venue. I like went into the change room and I picked up a chair and I chucked it. I was so mad. But I didn't feel like crying. I wanted to throw something. And I got like a talking to about that. And I was just like, that's just me letting out my like I was told I can't cry, so I threw something and now I'm being told I had to be a robot.
now we're just gonna walk in monotone. No, that's an awesome note to leave off on, because because we're girls doesn't mean that we're not gonna display what we feel in those moments, just like how guys get to display what they do and they get no criticism. They're just like, oh yeah, it's because they're a guy, and they just get the pass for it, the hall pass.
Exactly. But stand up for yourself and always follow your heart and do what you believe in. Because even if it's tough and even if other people are going to be against it, you just got to live your best life, but do it in a way that like will make God happy, or whoever uses your guiding post. Do it in that light and you'll be okay.
Thank you so much, Kaitlyn. Can you put them up for me? Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And you'll be here again next Friday for another episode of The Female Fist. Thank you.